Good morning. Happy Wednesday. It's our favorite day of the week. It's Data Day with our good friend Dean Croke. Welcome to Sales Chatter, the logistics podcast where we aim to help 10,000 reps hit a million GP. I'm your co host, Ryan Mohammed. With me is my amazing friend, President and CEO of RGTX Logistics Solutions, and the bodacious cowboy, Jeff Dickinson. How you doing this morning, brother?
Good morning, my friend. Happy Wednesday. We have our good friend from DAT Analytics, Dean Croke. That said, let's get into it.
Boom.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
Yeah, I'm always excited. Data Day. It's the day that I think my email output is the most, Jeff, because I'm just taking whatever Dean says and I'm just copy and pasting it and send it over to my customers. Be like, hey, what are your thoughts?
Perfect.
So so excited to have him. I know that he's busy on location this week, so we want to thank him so much for taking time of his busy schedule. I'm not sure if everybody caught DAT IQ live yesterday. It was an amazing show, and they were talking about intermodal and all that fun stuff. So we'll talk a little bit about that today, but we want to welcome our good friend Dean Crowe to Sales Chatter. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I had planned to come to you live from out on where all the trucks are parked, but internet connection here is not too good at the expo center, and cellular connection just didn't work. I did a walk around yesterday, hoping to show you some of the $1 million rigs that are sitting here that don't haul any freight, never haul any freight, probably will never haul any freight. Although most of the trucks, I will say here, that are the trucks that have probably got, I'm going to say, $750,000 sunk into them already that haven't worked, will go to work immediately after this. So a lot of guys will be here with their show trucks, and this is their coming out event where they'll parade them, hopefully win some awards, get some photo ops, some social media chatter going, and then they go to work. So, but I couldn't get out there for you.
It's all good. We'll be there live. I was telling Jeff and I always are talking about this. Like, we're really missing out. Can you talk about the Mid America Truck Show? What is it about? Is there going to be like speeches? Like, who's it for? What is this whole thing about?
It's mostly a carrier focused event. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's OEM, manufacturer, supplier focused. They've got, there'll be 850 booths here, ranging from, I have seen probably 20 tractor trailers go past my hotel and drive straight into the expo hall. So you'll have massive trucks and trailers in the exhibition hall in the I think it's the A section. And then you get down to the West Wing section where you'll see a lot of booths, a lot of 8x4, 10 by 8 booths, some 20 by 30 booths like the DAT one, a lot of booths in some of the West Wing area. And then some of the other area, as you go through, from A through E, the booths get smaller, but you'll have everything from a truck manufacturer to a trailer manufacturer to an engine company, right down to companies that make tools that owner-operators would use. So it's primarily owner-operator carrier fleet focused, but it includes everyone that supplies everything to that demographic. So it could be financial services. There'll be a lot of companies here recruiting drivers. And so that's sort of the expo piece. There'll be something like 60,000 people comes through the doors over the 3 days, about 850 vendors. They claim it's the largest truck show exhibition in the world. It's certainly the first one of the year in March. So it's a big event. Everyone looks forward to it. But the truck show piece that's outside, the Paul K. Young beauty competition that's 51 years old, is a kind of like if you remember back in the 2000s, Jesse James and the other biker builders had a biker build-off. So that flowed over from Trick My Truck into a truck build-off. And there was always a truck beauty competition going on, which is a judged competition. But it really got going after Trick My Truck, and the guys said, let's see who can build the meanest, baddest truck. Well, what's transpired over 20 years is some trucks that are just extraordinary, that would take your breath away when you look at the lights and the stainless steel. And when I'm looking at, this morning I was up taking some video of some bull haulers, and these were trailers that you couldn't see anything but stainless steel on. Don't know if you know how dirty they get, but when you have a load of cattle in them. But these guys have got show trucks, and a lot of the working trucks that are here are just amazing. I'm amazed that these guys can, run a truck over the road and keep it in the condition they do. That's good enough to win awards. But yeah, so that's sort of the gist of it. There's a big there's a lot of events on around that. To get to your point, Ryan, Friday nights, LB Shane, the country music stars on. Tony Justin is headlining it. DAT's got 15,000 tickets we're giving away at our booth. So there's a big event on Friday night. There's a dinner on Thursday night. And then all throughout the conference, there are pro talks. I'll be speaking on the freight market on, I think, Friday morning at 11 a.m., give or take. And then I'm on another panel with Ramel Watley, Truck and Hustle guys, on, I think it's about 1 o'clock on Saturday. So there's a lot of people speaking, doing educational, informational sessions on a whole range of things. So that's sort of going on in parallel to the exhibition and the truck show. If you think about the 3 days, the first 2 days, Thursday, Friday, are big on the booth expo side. Saturday really is driver's day, where drivers come in from, finishing their work week, and it's drivers and families day. So the big day is Saturday, because it'll be, families and kids. And of course, all the exhibitors want to get rid of all their swag that they don't want to take home. So it's also a good opportunity to pick up some pretty cool swag.
There you go. You know what? The biggest question that I have, and it's an inside conventional, right?
Yep.
With all those diesel trucks going there, they have to have a really good ventilation in there, because I can't imagine all that diesel. It must be overwhelming when they come in there.
Well, so on Saturday, they had monster trucks, Gravedigger and all those guys were in on Saturday. And it was funny to watch, as I was obviously been here since Saturday, getting my truck ready, and you could see all the triaxle dump trucks bringing the dirt in, and then the rubber tire dozers in there leveling it out, and then they had the race. Well, those things push out a fair few fumes, but there was nothing inside. It was all clean. They have pretty good ventilation. And then yesterday, all the dump trucks are taking it out. It's kind of fascinating. They'll be doing truck pulling in there also, so they'll be putting down different dirt for the truck pulling. So lots of entertainment for the family. It's a pretty big event in the Midwest, and for a lot of carriers that are here, it's a chance just to hang out. What you don't see outside of the main exhibition hall is probably off to my left from where I'm sitting, probably about 70 or 80 trucks that are just parked in an area, and it's just party time. It's party central. Not showing their trucks, probably won't even go to the expo. They might wander around, but it's just a great time to catch up with friends on the way through Louisville with a load. And that's for a lot. I've got a bunch of people I'm going to meet today that are having their 34-hour restart here at Matt's.
How many people attend this?
Well, last year they said 60,000. And year before it was about 70,000. I think before that. So I think last year though was the first one back after the pandemic. So I think about 60,000 was the number. A lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think because of the recession and not too much freight out there and everybody scrambling, that there's probably a lot of truckers that are going to be there because they have a little bit more time on their hands. Well,
yeah, and for a lot of guys, they've got a lot more money in the bank too this year because they've had a pretty good couple of years. Yeah. I mean, none of the guys that are showing their trucks here are worried about the cost of diesel. They're all, they're not spot market carriers necessarily. They're all contract private fleets with, contracting fleets. They do excavation machinery, soil contamination, grain haulers that buy and sell grain, cattle haulers that have feedlots. So there's a lot of people that aren't just into hauling freight. The trucking side of their business is sort of an ancillary component.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So you got to take a lot of pictures. Anybody in the audience, please go over to Dean's booth, get those free tickets, and snap a picture and put the hashtag sales chatter on social media, and so that we can see. It'll be a great time for everybody. Speaking of, like you said, the contracted freight and that there's not going to be spot carriers going to be there, let's talk about the current freight market conditions. What are you seeing on your side of, because the conversation is starting to heat up a little bit that I'm seeing on social media. So I'd love to get some insights, so that's some real data that we can go rather than seeing people complaining online.
Yeah, rates. If you look at spot rates, a little bit scary in that they dropped below $1.70 for the first time since May 2020. That's a little bit alarming. The forecasts have still got some downward movement, so we still haven't found the floor yet in dry van rates. Contract rates, active rates in routing guides, I think they're down about 5 to 6%. So that's the average of all the rates in our TMS systems. New rates entering routing guides are down about 11% based on earlier RFPs. So contract rates are still coming down. Of course, a component of that is the diesel fuel surcharge is coming down too. So it's getting lower gradually. So contract rates are edging slowly, I would say sort of stubbornly slowly, but they're on track to bottom out in the middle of the year. Spot rates, on the other hand, though, which are representing about 10% of loads moved, still got a ways to go. And I'm not alarmed. I mean, we're still about 12 cents a mile above 2019 levels. If we cross 2019 levels, then I think we've got a whole different discussion. But they're holding steady at about 12 cents a mile above 2019 levels, which of course was a bad year for carriers. We've still got excess capacity in the spot market. We're still not losing carriers at a rate that would, fundamentally shift the market. But I think the overarching thing is we're still in between seasons, and by that, as we spoke about on our show yesterday, we're in between produce seasons. We're in between shipping season on the ocean side. It's the slack season, to use a water analogy. It's the slack season in imports from overseas. So I think April is when we start to see spring volumes start to move, produce volumes start to move, imports start to move. So I'm looking for that. If that happens normally, then we'll start to see rates bottom out and start to come back up. But there's so many unknowns at the moment. In fact, I'm a little bit surprised rates have gone this low, because the only thing that's sort of helped carriers is diesel has been coming down at about the same rate, at $4.12. Carriers are still getting by. I did my carrier index. I did an analysis of that. They're still getting by and getting, they're close to break even, but they're certainly not making any money. You can get by and pay your bills on the rates you can get now if you're in the spot market, but you're definitely not putting away enough money for that $30,000 in-frame rebuild that you might have to do on that used truck. So it's kind of skating on thin ice when you do that, because you can pay your bills at the end of each month, but you really can't handle any major downtime, and that's the biggest worry that carriers have got.
Yeah, we were just talking about that last week. If it happens to cross that 2020 line, it's like, I don't know. It doesn't look good. Yeah. It just doesn't.
What's interesting is the number of carriers leaving the industry, the number of carriers coming in the interstate section is it's reached, it's kind of around a net zero at the moment as we head towards the end of March. So I think the exodus has certainly slowed down, if not turned around. And I view that as sort of a sentiment, which is kind of an odd thing when you think about rates as low as they are. What is exactly carriers are looking at? What's the opportunity they're looking at? I think it depends on where you are, what you haul. There's a lot of opportunity for carriers regionally. I think that's the thing that we kind of miss is not all carriers run 48 states and work for the national average for spot rate. You could be running in the southeast for closer to $3.50 a mile on short haul regional work. I think our top 50 lanes, our top 20 lanes averaged about 20 cents a mile higher than the national average this week. So I think it really depends where you run as to how profitable you'll be.
Yeah, and then how about all the carriers that do exactly that and do the super regional and the regional? Now you've got a tremendous amount of capacity in a very small area, all fighting for that freight to make that almighty dollar. And that's still going to drive down the rates because shippers are going to look for the cheapest rate out there just because the market that it is. So.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of small carriers and shippers exactly in that position, shippers that are small enough they can play the transactional spot market and drive down those rates.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, so that's sort of the broader picture on the rate front. We've still got a ways to go before we get to our forecast. We're still holding with our forecast that spot rates would turn in the second quarter of this year, end of this quarter, start of next. This is the last shipping week of this quarter. So obviously we'll see a big surge in shipping volume this week, and that'll hold rates up a little bit like they did at the end of February. And then they drop down in the first week of February. We expect they could drop down. If they drop down in the first week of March again, then that'll be my first indicator that maybe things are a little bit softer than we thought. On the demand front, ATA truckload tonnage index was up 2.3% year over year for February. So that's representative of the contract freight market. If you CAS, the CAS shipment index, which has a bit of intermodal and LTL volume in it, was more flat to sideways. And Jason Miller actually used that term. He said volumes will be flat this year, mostly sideways is where we're heading, which is good in a way that we're not worse than last year. Like the fact that volumes are steady is good. But if you watched our show yesterday, some of the information that Ari was sharing was a little bit alarming when you think about the West Coast, because it's been such a hot market for so long. He was talking about intermodal rates are down across the board about 4%, but out of Los Angeles down 20%. And so Los Angeles and Ontario freight markets are linked at the hip to imports, and they're really, for a long time, they've really been the pulse of the trucking market in the US because so much volume comes into that one little tiny footprint. Our volumes are down about 38% on that Los Angeles-Chicago lane alone. He was quoting rates today, or rates would have been effective today at $16.50 for a 53-foot intermodal box. So if you're moving it this week, $16.50 all in. Truckload rates are about, what's it, $2, call it $2, about $4,000 all in.
Yeah.
So what he was saying, it was really interesting because he said they've ordered, the big intermodal companies have ordered about 30,000 additional 53-foot boxes, and they're sitting there with freight that has to be filled. So on the intermodal side, it's also sucking a bit of volume away from long-haul truckload because they're trying to fill these empty 53-foot boxes they've added to the market. So that's why they're putting, as whatever revenue they can get in these particular units. That doesn't apply nationally, though. I mean, generally, intermodal contract is a much better option than truckload, but there's a certain geographic region where truckload is, and it's probably like a 550-mile radius from some of our big areas where truckload is highly competitive with next-day deliveries.
Yeah, and the thing is that then when you get over inundated with these 53-foot boxes, then you have to reposition them if you're not getting freight on them.
Yeah, and that happened. That happened in 2018, 2019, even in the pandemic, where you could see videos on YouTube of these 2-mile long trains of nothing but empty international boxes, going back from Chicago back to Los Angeles or Seattle, and then the sweeper boats would come in and pick them up. So yes, I think I did some studies on our exports the other day from the Piers IHS market database. I mean, for every 4 containers that come in, only 1 goes back loaded. And the title of my blog post was Shipping Air, because if you looked at our export commodities that we ship, it's mostly air that we ship in containers. Paper products are very high on the way out, but most of those containers have got to get back overseas to be reloaded. So the thing on the show that we talked about on Tuesday with Ari was, and he kind of concurred, intermodal. Intermodal's a competitor of truckload. You've got to watch it very carefully because it's also a good capacity option for brokers if you're talking to shippers. But there's a lot of media attention played to it, and I think people figured that truckload was tied a lot more closely to the volume of imports. At most, it's probably 8 to 10% is my guess that it contributes to truckload volume. But in certain areas, big port areas, it contributes a lot more, obviously, like Los Angeles, Savannah, and maybe New York, for example. So it's a big topic, but it's not moving the needle nationally in terms of demand, because demand is sort of flat when you think about some of the tonnage indicators, but it is really, really having a big impact on some of those markets, mostly Los Angeles, not so much on the East Coast, though. But the West Coast that's a serious issue for carriers because of the lack of demand and the lack of imports. Then on top of that, you've got the wet season happening right now with the floods that are impacting the produce market. So that could be precarious for reefer capacity also.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. There was actually something I wanted to bring up that you actually segued into, was that CTV News is one of the biggest news outlet here in Canada. and they said April 1st. The title of it was inflation, 3 items that could cost you a lot more, and lettuce was one of them. And they mentioned like the Salinas Valley, basically with the flood and all that stuff. And
Yep.
you'd think about it too. You're like, lettuce again. I remember last year when they had the shortages, and you had places where sandwich shops, Italian bakeries, they couldn't put lettuce on their thing because they said supply chain issues, and Subway again. But one of the biggest things that we're seeing is inflation as well with that. Like we always talk about I won't talk about the vertical farming because we did talk about that a couple times, but is there something like people paying attention to like things like this with lettuce specifically? Because for me as a consumer, Dean, this is the second year where a 3 bag of lettuce is going to cost me close to $10 when it used to cost me $3 or $4.
Right.
Is someone paying attention to that and looking at alternatives
And
going forward?
Yeah, don't forget the strawberries too.
Yeah, well, so 50% of your strawberries, broccoli, and lettuce come from Monterey County, where all those floods are. So early indicators are they may not have had as much damage as what it would appear from the outside, but we're still waiting to see how that shapes up because they had a lot of crops already in the ground. But yes, you could expect. So your question was who's paying attention. I'm bad. I don't look at prices when I go and shop for lettuce. Like if I want to eat healthy, I'm buying it. I don't care what it costs. But conversely, I might be thinking if it's now you brought it to my attention, if it's really expensive, now I might find an alternative. So I think people that where it will affect people like my wife's catering business. So anyone in food services will be looking at their cost of goods going up. So anyone that's restaurants, for example. I mean, we'll all pay for it as a consumer in the end, but they will be looking to pass on those increased costs to all of us. So we'll pay for it eventually, whether it be you're buying a head of lettuce or you're paying for it in your salad at the supermarket or restaurant.
And that's where we'll see the alternatives, right, Jeff? Like we'll see that, like you get your Caesar salad, but it's like spinach, and you're like, what is this? I'm not looking forward to that. But I love that you brought up food service because that's where it's going to feel it the most. Like for myself, I'm the same thing like you. I just pick up what I need to pick up and things like that. Right. But a head of lettuce a week is not really going to do anything for me. But when you look at the food service, the restaurants, and adding on to that article that I just mentioned, they talked about alcohol. There's actually going to be a tax imposed, which goes up to 6.3%, which is 40% higher than the current tax right now. So I think just the cost of living with everything, and we look at like the spot rate, being a broker, things like that. Jeff, you can agree right now, like it's hard. It's hard for everybody out there right now, right? And you see that Disney's going to get rid of 7,000 people. It's how do we kind of overcome this, right, Jeff?
Yeah, and I tell you what, I was just in a restaurant over the weekend, and they implemented a surcharge tax on top of it, which was 7%. And the gratuity was already built in, and it was just a solid 20%. You had no choice on a 15. They already tax your card 20%. And then there's that, they called it a temporary surcharge, 7% on top. I was like, so automatically you go there to a restaurant, I'm not going to name them, and you're paying 27% on top.
Wow.
Which is crazy. But, it's like, okay, you want to get out of the house. You want to go out and enjoy yourself. You don't want to be stuck in the home. That's only one restaurant that I know of, but are others following suit? That's the question. And with the cost of goods and what they're buying it for, to stay open, it's like feast or famine, right? You got to charge what you have to charge to stay open. And then how many people are going to accept those surcharges and that mandatory 20% gratuity, and still want to go out when everybody's suffering, to your point, Ryan, brokers, truckers, shippers, everybody's in the same bucket. We're all treading water, and it's you can't say the strongest or the fittest are going to survive because there's so many people, there's some strong people, there are large companies, there are small companies, we're all under the same umbrella. We're all facing the same demise.
Well, Jeff, I think we're still suffering a little bit from, I'll use the word hangover effect from the pandemic, right? Because, and I'll use that term in relation to a story that AB InBev had out a little while ago. Their sales were down last year. They reported a sales volume decline at the end of last year as steep price increases prompted a drop in demand. So to your point, price rises will affect people's, their options. They'll look for different alternatives. So then it's not the only thing that trucks haul, but food and bev is a huge part of what truckers haul during the summer months.
Yep. And I just read Bed Bath and Beyond are laying off 1,300 people, and they're going to be closing. I forgot how many stores out here.
Right.
It's unbelievable. Like there's 582 people out of their e-commerce down in Union. I think that's where it is, where headquarters or something down there. I just read that they did. So I mean, it's we're going to see some more of that. Unfortunately, we really are. You see it every day. Every time you open up, newspaper or something, somebody's closing up shop.
Right.
Sad.
And we think that I think we covered this last week, that online sales will be picking up some of that. That the switch to online sales during the pandemic is stuck to the point where brick and mortar's not coming back.
Brick and mortars are going to start shutting down. They really are going to.
Yeah, it's crazy. Even to add to that point, everybody talks about, hey, brick and mortar and e-commerce. It's the fight was always, hey, I can just go into a store and pick up something. I don't have to worry about 5 to 7 days. But I saw this with my wife last week. She ordered a jacket and it wasn't the right size. And she purchased the right size. It came in a day. It's ridiculous of kind of what's actually kind of going on. So I think these things are going to continue to add on. And like we said,
I'm returning this. I mean, it came in one day and I can return it for free. I mean, you see it all the time. It's unbelievable.
You don't like the mustache comb they got from Amazon?
Yes, it's getting a little thicker, I got the extra blade and all that.
Sounds to kind of see. So Dean, as we're going to wrap up here, what are your thoughts on the Mid-America Truck Show? Who are you looking forward? What are you looking forward to seeing while you're there for the 3 days?
Wandering around the expo hall, seeing what's new, what's sort of new on the market. There'll be some autonomous truck vendors there. There'll be some new equipment vendors there, particularly looking for innovation that'll give carriers an edge, looking for those sorts of things. It'll be always good to see our competitors there, see who else is there. I'm always fascinated by which companies are recruiting drivers. I remember my first MATs back in 2015. I was shocked to see Walmart have a driver recruiting booth. And I thought, wow, Walmart's like a 4% annual turnover company. Why are they looking for drivers? And of course, it was highlighting the shift in demographic. There was a generational shift in drivers, and they were suddenly facing, a lot of their drivers that had been there a long time were starting to retire, and they were looking to fill that void. So I'm always interested in who's looking for drivers and what they're paying, what the rates are, whether it'll be a change this year. Are there big sign-on bonuses, or are there still plenty of drivers available in the market? Because it's one of the big things that goes on in the West Wing is the driver recruiting piece. There'll be a lot of recruiters here with booths this weekend. They'll have a lot of drivers, a lot of owner-operators manning the booths, looking to build out that network. I'll be interested to see if that's, still that trend continues. And of course, catching up with friends that own some pretty nice trucks and getting a bit of content for social media.
Sure. You know what? I'd love to see the argument between AVs and diesel truck drivers, and how do you feel about the AVs and where it's going? Because obviously, the more AVs, the less drivers you need, right? But you're talking about recruiting. Yeah, you think. But you know how long that they can go, and it's going to be used more for transfers, local deliveries, and everything, just because the capacity of power that they can have at a single time. So, I would be extremely interested on what driver's perspective is on this whole, AI, AV, and I think that would be extremely interesting.
I could almost tell you what they'd say, but we can't repeat it on air. This crowd here, if you ask that question here, you wouldn't get a friendly response when it comes to autonomous vehicles from the group of owner-operators and fleets and drivers over here. In fact, it wouldn't matter where you go. Most drivers are fairly cold on the concept because anything that threatens their livelihood is viewed, poorly. The reality is that I think the people that make this technology have done a poor job on selling it. And by poor job, I mean you can't come out of the gate and say our goal is to replace drivers. Like you just can't. And so many of them did that. They really, I think, screwed up their opportunity when they could have talked about adding technology in that assists drivers as opposed to replacing drivers. The reality is that I think, and this is my opinion, that you'll need more drivers, not less. Because when you run a middle mile autonomous vehicle, assuming that works on dense traffic lanes, you're going to need a dray driver on either end. God forbid we run multiple trailers like we do in Australia, like B doubles and B triples, where you could run autonomous trucks and make it really, really effective and cost efficient and environmentally friendly. But if you just ran single trailers, you're going to find a lot of dray opportunity for carriers to shuttle trailers back from the middle mile drop-off point back to the shipper receiver, reload, unload, reload, and bring that trailer back. It takes a trailer pool. It takes, that's what we do with road trains in Australia, where we have drop yards on the outside of capital cities, where you'll have a road train of 3 trailers run between major destinations, but then you've got another 2 trucks in addition running the second and third trailer into unload and back out to loaded. It takes a lot of coordination, a lot of effort. You've got to have a good freight balance. You've got to have good density of freight to make sure your unloaded and loaded trailers are always in sequence.
Exactly.
I don't think people have factored this in. I think you'll need more drivers. That's my gut instinct on having run a similar business model with road trains.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder, has there been any bickering? Because obviously the AV folks are at the Mid-Atlantic Trucking Show, and now you've got the gas, the diesel drivers there. Are any clashes? I mean, any bickering, them going up and saying, "What are you doing?" and stuff like that? Because
I don't know. There could be
opportunity to do so.
It could be. I might go and ask the question. I might.
Yeah,
I know they're not. Yeah, I might. I might just go up.
Yeah, I think you should. Just so Jeff and Dean and the audience knows, WrestleMania is actually this weekend as well. So maybe we'll get a pre-WrestleMania. WrestleMania's in Hollywood. It's in Hollywood this weekend, so we might get a little exactly for us in there. So
off the top of the fridge van.
That'd be awesome. Got to see. Dean, want to thank you so much. I know, like we said, you're busy this whole week, taking your time with us. Let us know about the details about where you'll be at Matt's and as well as DAT IQ Live.
Yeah, you can swing by our booth. It's booth. I'll quickly get it's 65412 is our booth number. Swing by. I'll be outside West Wing with my truck. Make sure you come by and pick up your booth at the booth. Pick up your tickets for the show on Friday night. Starring LV Shane. So that's where we'll be, in the West Wing and just outside.
The West Wing and DAT IQ Live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. with him and his amazing co-host, Ken Adamo. It's a great show to kind of see what's going on in the current freight market trends. So like we said, thank you again, Dean. It's always a pleasure to always have you on every single Wednesday. Definitely giving everybody some data so they can tell their story. And the audience, want to thank you guys for coming out this morning, always supporting Jeff and I as we kind of go into the journey together. If you found value in this, please like, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend, share this with a neighbor, the Amazon driver, whether it be EV or he's driving gas. Share it with them, let them know your thoughts, and we'll see you guys tomorrow, where we've got another female driver who will be joining us to tell her story about driving for over 20 years in this industry. So we're excited for that. Thank you to Daman, our corporate sponsor at Centurion Trucking. If you're an agent and looking to make a move, he's paying up to 60% GP across the board. So with that being said, thank you so much. Cowboy, take us home, my man.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dean, for joining us today and taking the time out of being at Mid-Atlantic Trucking Show. Everybody out there, if you are at that show, please go visit Dean and the DAT crew at booth 65412. I'm good with numbers, so I know I remember that. So make it a point to stop by and say hello to Dean and the folks there. And with that said, we'll see you tomorrow with another episode of Empowering Women into Trucking. Have a good afternoon. Take care. Bodacious Cowboy out.